A lot of this comes down to relationships.
Yeah.
And I know that's something that you feel a bit passionately about. I understand you're writing a book kind of exploring. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about the book, but also sort of a philosophy of what you believe relationships are in the selling process?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the foundation and where my starting point was saying there is a platform that you've got to meet. So it might be a qualifier. And I call it the trust platform in the book. So there are elements of the trust platform. And what we're trying to do is to say, okay, when you're on top of the platform, you have built these level of trust. And the trust is with the individual, the entry point to an organization, which is somebody who's attracted to your product or service. And you have convinced them that will make a difference to them. But then you're into the sort of decision-making unit. So how do you build trust in a decision-making unit when actually typically only half of them you can physically get to? So how do you extend your product or service into this? It will make a difference, or it could fit within the organization. And I think the technical side of software selling or integration of your product service, an area we work extensively in, I think is the biggest challenge. So you've got to understand that. We might say that in 10 years' time, it won't be a challenge at all because everything will be easily integratable, if that's a word. So actually,
there goes all the consulting money.
Yeah. So that's the platform. Is what's the technology, who are the people, and what are you trying to achieve? And then it's about, do they believe that you will deliver? So this, for me now, is the selling process. So in the buyer-seller relationship, the buyer then becomes the organization, because they have to be absolutely convinced that what you are putting on the table, they will trust to deliver. So they pass the baton, they pass the trust to you. And at that point, you actually then have to say, okay, can I guarantee it? Ideal. Or am I certain that I will deliver it? And can I guarantee the outcome? Perfect. Yeah. So in a trusted relationship, you are certain of the outcome. And that is what the sort of the journey of the book is looking like, to say, actually, I start off with a buyer and seller, then I look at an organization to organization, and ultimately I have a long-term trusted relationship, which is sustainable and it can be delivered and evolved with over time. And actually, what I look at, though, is what's the seller's responsibility in that journey. So we talk about a seller being an individual and professional sales, and how do you professionalize the sales experience as part of that, and can you equip people on that journey? Or is it actually organization to organization? So are you an introductory and a facilitator as part of the journey? Or actually, do you literally have to sell?
Yeah.
So, and what we're looking at really is that an organization buys, individuals recommend, but an organization buys, hence why we've got this big expansion of decision-making teams and influencing groups and economic buyers. But ultimately, the win is when actually organizational to organizational, the culture fits, the outcome is certain, and then you actually build a joint team that actually evolves the partnership or the journey around that product or service.
So I don't think trust can ever be something taken out of the equation, right? And trust is built through relationships. But there are some interesting things happening in business that could, that I suppose could turn that on its head. One is, more than ever, businesses are taking risks going with unknown, untrusted organizations because it's up and coming, and sort of corporate culture has arrived at a place where taking risks is finally rewarded. Yes. Whereas for a long time it was nobody got fired for hiring the IBMs, or in the States where we said AT&T, right? They were trusted long-term brands, and so no one veered from those main contracts. But now we're in a day and age where someone can rock up and they have, you know, a handwritten business card, but the latest in technology, and people will extend their business to them without that trust. Why do you think that is? And is that something that would continue to grow? Is trust and how it's built changing? Or is it that's just a bit of an interesting opportunity at this moment in time?
No, I think it's a really fascinating observation and question. So, I mean, I challenge myself with Uber Freight, I call it. So, you know, we're a very large logistics business. Ultimately, you can't print on demand bananas. Somebody's got to physically grow them, pick them, ship them, move them, and get them to store to sell them, that sort of thing. And so the physical nature of what we do still exists. And people actually respond to that and require that. However, the actual coordination and the visibility and the speed is the technical or tech solution. And somebody could come in like Uber and say, I can do this in a new way. I think it would be unusual if a Tesco's bought the business card and the jeans view and the tech, but they're looking for it. That's the thing. They're excited by it. And innovation now it's a sort of buzzword that actually is true. It's people are looking for their next best idea. It is happening very quickly. End-to-end visibility is really important. So you've got to have all of those elements, and you've got to be investing in the people, in the processes for the next generation, the next moment, the next step. So at Wincanton, we actually have 13 tech investments that we've done through a Dragon's Den environment, where we take an equity stake, we give them investment, and then we work with them for a year to create a business plan to take to the UK market.
Right, which is great, because then it gives you at least an opportunity to not only be the long-standing or the trusted partner, but also sort of the agile, innovative, just came up on the market. And by the way, we have all of this experience behind us, which is fantastic.
So we sort of learnt from the P&G model, where actually, you can't do it all yourself.
Yeah.
Let's buy in the expertise and work with partners. Be the best person to collaborate with on a new idea.
Yeah, competition.
Yeah,
That's also part of it as well, isn't it?
I mean, we're the largest buyer of subcontract services in the UK market. So, actually everybody who works in this tiered market of supply chain in the UK works with Wincanton in some way, and we work with all our competitors as well.
You've got your hands in all the pockets.
Indeed. Maybe not it's entirely the right phrase, but yes, we've got our hands in a lot of pies.
a lot of pies, So in the buyer-seller relationship, we've talked about the fact that we now have more people involved. We talked about why we have them involved, the way that solutions have become more complex and they cross more operational boundaries, so naturally people need to be engaged. But where is the power sitting today? It used to be, it was largely in the hands of the seller. We would bring to bear the right information, the solutions, the pricing, the resources. We would wow you, would take you to dinner. I mean, we would just overwhelm you with ourselves. And you'd be convinced or dragged right into doing business with us. But somehow the seller was really at the heart of that. And, whether it was on the golf course or around the dinner table. Today, because of the internet, buyers have a lot of information. The statistic is out there, it ranges. Is it 60, is it 70, is it 74%? But what we know is by the time an RFP crosses our desk, that buyer has largely determined what they're already going to do. And so we have to make very good decisions about whether we participate. So does it mean that the buyer now really holds the power in the purchasing relationship, or does the seller still have a significant role to play? And if they do, or how has it just changed?
Yeah, and I think the question, well, you made a statement about power. It's not necessarily a statement I would use, but I absolutely understand where you're coming from. So I relate it back. It changed the financial crisis, 2008-9, changed the way people bought, because it changed corporate governance. So, when you're a very large, so we do £100 million deal, say, 5 years, 20 million a year. That's a typical sort of deal we would do. So that goes through a lot of governance. So my answer will be shaped by that sort of corporate governance, because otherwise we might get into lots of different buyer-seller relationships. So the power certainly, people moved to a cost agenda. Yeah. So how can I deliver cost now, or which was really important to them, or can I deliver costs certainty over a future span? Yeah. And so we had
the future buying of fuel, which Southwest intelligently did.
Yeah. So those, so all those sort of things. So commodities, difficult market to predict, certainly because of the political environment. But if you look at the sort of supply chains in which we work, the buyers didn't have the expertise in joining all of it together. Okay. So our task as sellers was to actually look at elements of the solution we could add to make it more attractive. So that was the power shift, if we use that phrase, because I always used to fall out with a lot of people who wanted to buy just small components and packages and say the best thing for us, says the buyer, is to package it in and commoditize the sellers, take the seller out of the process, because I can actually benchmark it because of the information availability. I can process it automatically, so a low cost of doing business, a low cost of procurement, and I just take all this sort of seller influence out of the process. Yeah. And so our task was to say, hold on, let me demonstrate to you why that's the lowest value way of doing business. And I think it changed the relationship to say, I need to understand how I add more value to my selling process. Yeah, I need to think more widely about how I can add more value to an organization. So I think the power shift is always the buyer has to say yes. So ultimately, they have the last word. But they can be convinced by this bigger buying unit to say, actually, I can add a lot more value around the sides of this central deal.
Yeah.
And it made us look much more broadly about what value we could add, not just then, but in the future as part of the process. We had to guarantee that the value could be added and built and all those sort of things. So I think the shift was to the buyer, and then it came back to the seller because actually the opportunity was bigger.